Okay, hello, welcome to SpitFireMods.com. Today we'll be installing a 6-mode burst mod chip kit into this brand new CG chipset Xbox controller. Before we get started, we're going to get our chip set up here, bending the pins, and then we're going to open the controller. First we're going to remove the serial plate. Serial tag. And now we will remove the 7 screws. Torx T8 screws that hold the controller together. There's 1 under the serial number plate, 3 on each side. For this job you'll need a hot glue gun, a soldering iron, some solder and hot glue obviously, and I use a Dykes for cutting the wire, cutting and stripping, X-Acto knife for helping get things in place, pliers to needle nose pliers to hold your stuff in place, and then a Torx T8 screwdriver which has the security pin hole in the center. Plenty of people sell those on eBay, or your local hardware store typically carries that. It's called a security Torx in the T8 size is T8. The schematics and diagrams for this install can be found at SpitFireMods.com. So we're going to remove our case. I usually leave the screws in the case, make it easy to put it back on. Lift our main board out of the case. Always hold this like this, otherwise everything will fall out on you. Put that aside. Okay, so this is the side we'll be working on. I don't normally pull these off, but for the video purposes we're going to pull those off. You can meld them with your heat gun if you hit them, so it's not a bad idea to take them off. We're going to be gluing our chip down. There's a position right here between the white plastic notch and the hole right below your right trigger. 1 little shot of hot glue. Keep it tight against that white tab so that you're not obstructing this hole here. There's a hole right here you don't want to be in front of. So your chip will be glued down. You have access to the trigger buttons. This here is the right trigger button. Your left trigger buttons, center pins where we're going to solder to. Your power is this pin right here to the right side, the right side pin. There's 2 pins side by side, and then there's another pin down here. I believe that would be a contact to your battery, and then your ground is going to be over here. So we're going to solder to the positive, the negative. There's no chip here, so this is not a matrix. If it was a matrix controller, it would have a chip here. So this will be a CG. So we're going to wire to the sync button. Both triggers are position 4 LED. How's that go? 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Back and forth. So 4th position LED is where we will go. First step would be to get some solder on all our connections on the chip. So we're going to hit the chip with some solder. Get them all nice and coated with solder. Make this install as easy as possible. Then we are going to need a pin shorting out pin 4 to pin 8. So it's always a good practice to solder up your connections when possible. I usually hold them in a tweezers, but I'm trying to get this in the video camera. Just burnt my finger, so very easy to do that when you're working with small parts. So we're going to wire that to pin 4 here. Alright, so once it's on pin 4, we will grab hold of that and bend it over to pin 8, and then bend it into place so that it can be soldered with as little obstruction as possible. Alright, so now we have a ground bus going from pin 4 to pin 8, with which we can use as a ground. Now, should you be putting a tactile button in, you would not hook the sync button up, but instead to pin 3, you would run it to your tactile, and then your other side of your tactile would come back to pin 4 for your connection to ground. Alright, so let's go ahead and wire up complete our ground wire. I typically wire the voltage wires first. Doesn't really matter what order you'd like to do this in. It is totally up to you. Now, the easiest way to, when you have a nice connection to solder to here, is to heat up the joint and stick your wire into it up to the insulation part. And then position your wire, bend it into place so it's basically hanging at the right length, so you're not shorting yourself on either end as far as having enough wire. And then when making a connection here, since you pre-soldered it, you can pretty much just rub against the wire till you with some heat, which will make the solder stick by roughing it up a little bit. Now we're going to wire the other power connector just so that we can glue them all together at one time. Again, we're going to heat up our connection. Put the one end of the wire in the solder. It's good to have a little solder on the tip of your iron. A little bit of flow to get the keep everything going good. That way, if this connection needs a little solder, it will suck it off there and make a good connection. This small wire tends to not strip good well sometimes, and if you grab too hard, you cut it. So always leave just a little bit extra length. So when you cut your wire a couple times, you still got something left, and you don't end up short, and then you're going to redo the whole wire. Alright, so we have our hot leg and our ground leg. Now the sync button and the LED are probably the toughest ones, so I'm going to go ahead and change colors here to a blue wire so you can get a good look at those. Let's do the LED first. The LED on 6 mode is 100 ohm. It's the only one that we use 100 ohm on. Prep your resistor, cut a leg off, save that leg for later because we use that to we will use that for our next bus connection when we do the bus connection. This time I will hold my pliers so I don't burn my fingers there. A little bit of solder on that resistor and then connect it to our chip. Alright, so we basically have pin 2 going to our LED, and that has the resistor on it. On a matrix, this is where your diode and your resistor combination go, with your diode stripe pointing towards the chip. Now, we definitely want to solder up the ends when we do the LED and the sync button. Always good to grab up some solder on our wire